Hey everyone, this is Ben from HowToPriest. Today I'd like to go over how to play a Discipline Priest in a raid setting. This guide will provide you with bite-sized chunks of information to digest and use as a resource to get a quick understanding of a very complex class. Before I get into the guide, I'd like to clear something up. People ask me, is Disc a viable healer? The answer to that question is, undoubtedly. Discipline Priests provide, in theory, the most healing throughput in the entire game. Period. We are not 50% healer, 50% DPS, like some people like to say. And we are not some kind of a hybrid. We are healers that happen to bring an impactful amount of DPS that other healers don't. Most encounters are designed to either have several large raid-wide AoE abilities and relatively low damage in between, or they're designed to have more constant damage throughout with fewer or less extreme raid-wide AoE. Discipline operates in a raid in two distinctive phases. I call them the Conserve Phase and the Ramp-Up Phase. The Conserve Phase is a period of an encounter where there is relatively low raid damage going out. During this time, you'll want to limit your casting to Power Word Shield, Penance, Refreshing Your Dot, and maybe Plead to maintain Atonement if it's needed. Smite can be used during your Conserve Phase, but I'll explain more on this later. Depending on the type of encounter, you'll want to adjust your playstyle for your Conserve Phase to save mana or maximize your healing. Atonements out during this period can be anywhere between 2 to 8 atonements, again depending on the type of encounter. Your default method of burst is your Light's Wrath burst. This requires 18 or more atonements. Because of the way that Light's Wrath works, it scales with the more atonement that you have out in the raid. In order to do this rotation, you'd first want to refresh your dot regardless of how many atonements you currently have out. You'll then cast Power Word Radiance, again regardless of how many atonements you have out, roughly 4 to 5 times to get your desired amount of atonements, which in this case is 18 or more. You'll then follow that up with Light's Wrath, Penance, and Smite until you're below 8 atonements or until the raid is not taking damage. Penance and Light's Wrath can be swapped depending on the type of damage and the timing of the damage that it's occurring. Use your best judgment here. Next we have Rapture and Shadow Fiend bursts. This will require about 12 to 15 atonements. In order to do this rotation, you'll want to first refresh your dot regardless of atonements out in the raid, cast Power Word Radiance twice, use Shadow Fiend, use Rapture, and then Power Word Shield during the duration of Rapture, and you can finish by casting Penance and filling with Smite at the end, again until the raid quits taking damage or you're below 5 atonements. If you have Barrier of the Devoted, a gold trait in the Disc artifact weapon, it can be rather beneficial to utilize this 3-minute cooldown to maximize your atonement healing. This leads me to a Barrier burst. This would require anywhere between 12 to 18 or more atonements. You'd first start off by refreshing your dot, casting Power Word Radiance 4 to 5 times to get your desired amount of atonements, use Power Word Barrier, Shadow Fiend if it's available, Penance, and Smite till you're under 8 atonements or the raid quits taking damage. This method would be most useful in an encounter where the majority of the raid will stack in the barrier for a majority of its duration. Fights like Mythic Il'gynoth are prime examples of when this method would be best worth using. Use your best judgment as to when Halo should be thrown in during each rotation. The effect of Halo is amplified by the number of atonements out, since the damage effect, based on the damage done to the first target it hits, heals atonement targets in addition to the Halo heal effect. These are just some examples of different types of bursts and abilities to use, when to use them, and how you'll maximize them the most depending on the type of encounter. At the end of the day, we need to try to match our healing done to the damage taken for every encounter as well as we can. Types of encounters. There are 2 major types of encounters this expansion: constant damage and burst encounters. Think of this like a sliding scale. An encounter may be a mix of the two or solely one or the other. Example being Ursoc, which is almost an entirely burst-focused encounter, where we would cover only certain burst windows, and our mana would probably be best spent there. Cenarius, on the other hand, has a mix of both. but much more constant AoE damage. How you'd approach each of these fights is vastly different. Keeping a higher atonement count throughout the encounter on Cenarius, for example, which may be around 8 to 10 atonements, would be far more beneficial than maintaining the same amount on Ursoc. How you play on a specific encounter is completely up to you, but on the HowToPriest Discord we can help guide you to the optimal method for each encounter. Tips: never plead past 5 atonements. Don't try covering every AoE ability if your mana cannot handle it. Try to work out an innervate with a Boomkin if your raid has one. Get Darkmoon deck promises from the auction house if you can afford one. Use my weak auras linked in the description below to time your atonements for major AoE damage. Let other healers handle topping people off. Shadowmen should be used sparingly. Don't feel obligated to keep up 5 atonements if they're not needed. And lastly, conserve mana as much as you can, even if that means wasted GCDs by not casting Smite during your Conserve phase. Discipline Priests are very versatile healer. We excel at healing large, raid-wide AoE and freeing up healing cooldowns from other healers to be used in other areas of an encounter. Power Word Barrier and Pain Suppression give us utilities that can help ensure success during progression content. Discipline Priests do have their downsides, however. It is a hard spec to master, and we rely heavily on mana return and mana regen, and we're forced into forming good mana consumption habits. We are not spot healers and we should not be utilized as one. Other healers excel far better at this than we do. Discipline Priests are a top tier spec if played properly, and I hope this video guide has helped you learn a few of the intricacies of a very complicated spec. If you ever have further questions, we're always available on the HowToPriest Discord linked in the description. Thank you for watching, and good luck.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe and comment on the next kind of video that you want to see. Also be sure to join us in Discord.